This is going to be controversial. The video says this is anti-Plato, which means anti-Plato, anti-Socrates, anti-Aristotle. Why would I say such a thing? In the context to denying Western civilization, the foundation, and pretty much all of thought that comes with it. Now, I'm not saying that Plato is a bad person, or you should not read Plato. I'm not saying he's internally flawed. In fact, I'm not even going to make arguments why he's even bad, supposedly. But I'm not saying I don't like Plato because I don't like Plato. I'm saying this as an important factor to Asianarianism, what it means for that ideology. Now, this came about on the Stark Truth when I was first interviewed, and I was being a naughty boy and saying that I didn't like to hear Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle, and Alex called me out on that, and I guess I should be more prepared why I don't like Plato very that much. Well, the first thing is, I will say that in my early education, or at least I was a part of the socialist club at my university. For a bit, I flirted with it, and I picked up some socialist books and talked to friends about it just to understand. Now, it's not like I didn't know what the alt-right was. I already knew what the alt-right was at the time. There just wasn't a name for it. I was just flirting with ideals and being eccentric. I wasn't a self-proclaimed leftist, I was one of those other normal Sweppel people that did things. And there's something I did learn from socialism. Whenever I hear the word destroy Western civilization, it's very offensive. It's offensive on the fact that how could you destroy our arts as white people? I believe that is so integral to white interest. But once again, we live in an age of liberal cosmopolitan society where it seems to me that Western civ means is now some kind of evil patriarchy or some kind of evil oppressive system. Or in some way, to overcome that, you have to pretend it's universal and applies to everything, and it's for mankind. Both are so silly. It's silly to assume that this is some universal knowledge for humanity, and it's silly to note that it's oppressive, evil patriarchy. It boils down to being the interest of white people and what they have accomplished. And so if you are going to be a white nationalist, well, the first red pill is going to be, I guess, Plato. Your very first philosophy major, when you enter the room, your teacher's going to tell you how great Socrates was, which is pretty much of Plato's imagination. And you're going to be taught how the Greeks are amazing. Now, unfortunately, I see this all the time. Autistic white libertarians from the ages of like 17 to early 20s will role play as if they're in ancient Spartan or Athenian society, pretending they're like Socrates and thinking this strange, we're all in the family, and this is a very disturbed and perverted view of life. In fact, loving Plato is going to basically not let any other writer of mine come in. It basically is the end-all, be-all. So let me restate this. This is not a criticism against Plato. This is a criticism against the worship of an icon. I'm saying Plato is no different from William Shakespeare, and he's no different from Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ probably being the most famous of these figures and going in our culture that we have to love. A good white society is also a good Christian society, which is also Judeo, and will cause problems for that nature being so, because then you're Jewish, and then white nationalists are anti-Semitic, so there's problems with that. And so you have to deal with these things that are going to be you're going to have to deal with the things that's ingrained in our culture. And so sometimes we can't rely on an icon to be our one person. I think of it like in 4 different ways to think about this current situation. look, in normie cult behavior, like the normative person who's not even in politics and just wants to be this sweple bourgeois person and vote for Hillary Clinton, most of them are going to worship Plato, and they worship him every single day like a god, as an individual, like they know him. You ever see that show Mighty Max? When Max, voiced by Rob Paulsen, walks in his bedroom and he has a bust of Socrates and like, oh, great Socrates, you are my favorite. What would I do without you? You know, he's telling everyone that in that 90s kids show to like Socrates. A strange reference, but still, even it penetrates in cartoons. I mean, the right-wing behavior would be like what I just said. You continue the tradition of Plato. But once again, Plato is not the center like an individual. That white nationalist philosopher might even be Greg Johnson of Countercurrents, or even everything on the Philosophy Illustrated channel. I can't recall that guy, Stephen Molyneux, whatever. You know, those YouTube philosophers. They maybe one day replace that interest, and they're kind of like these. The philosophy is obsessed with the Roman school and these Greeks, and it just shows you that in right-wing thing. Now, the left wing is appalled by that, and the left wing knows how wrong and appalling that is, but instead they want to replace Plato with Slavoj Zizek and Toni Morrison. It's disgusting, too. I mean, that's even worse than Plato. I think Zizek Morrison is worse than Plato. Why would you ever do that? I think the left is even more nuttier to think that. It's the left has a half-truth, but it's ultimately wrong. The right wing just continues that tradition of Plato, but they want to put this whole sitting in the hall of Valhalla style, which is okay, but you're playing a game. And normies don't know what to do. They're just normative, they're idiots, and they do stuff white people like, written in Christian Lander's book. And so I guess my way of looking at it is kind of like, you know, he's just a guy of the past. He's a figment of our imagination. He is interesting, but he's not the center of our affairs. We can like him, and we can enjoy his stuff, what he has to say. Plato is worshipped like Jesus or Shakespeare. Isn't there more important things in life than him? Like your family, your friends, your own freedom, your children, your wife or husband. Why live a life of idol worship? I mean, it's certainly a part of religion. Religion has idol worship, and I can't do anything about it. And some people need a fatherly figure or some icon in order to strive. But Plato is basically the atheist surrogate. You know, the amazing atheist or some kind of atheist guy would be like, I don't like God or Jesus Christ until I found Plato, and you've created this cult of personality ideology with Plato. Now, making a runaround, going back to the start, this is going to cause problems with Asian Arianism, is because Asian Arianism is a unique synergy between white and Asian culture. Now, Asian culture has Confucius and Lao Tzu and, you know, like Basho or any of the classic. I would even say Yukio Mishima should become the Plato of Asian Arianism. And that's what I said in the Stark Truth. Let's make Yukio Mishima the icon of truth, because he's there, he has so knowledge, and he can define. He's our Jim Jones, James Jones, blah, Jonestown, Kool-Aid drinking, whatever, cult icon. But not to advocate it, but I feel as though you need figures in order to understand that behavior. And so in Asian Arianism, if we have Plato as the god, then it's going to show those white values that are causing problems, like being sarcastic, ironic, thinking everyone is an intellect, all these pathetic things that creates YouTube culture. Look, I mean, I like how Aristotle eventually created logic and how all the sciences and what we know about the world is there. But in abstract sense, in the English major, they treat English as if there's one right way of thinking. In math, you know the quadratic formula. You learn that, that's the only truth. In English, to learn about Derrida or Foucault, this is what they said. But we all know Derrida and Foucault are full of shit. And where they trace them back to? The Greek philosophers. Or they will quote-unquote deconstruct a Shakespeare play, making it very obnoxious, retarded, and they're basically using rhetoric to justify their perversions, while Foucault dies by going to gay clubs. And then, but you see here, there's something penetration about the arrogance of being an individual. And you can thank that to Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. Now, in Asian-Arianism, hopefully, the Asian-Arianism will protect the family, the culture, our people, submission to authority, and be a collective one, instead of being autonomized individuals high on capitalism, doing perverted things. I believe the white interest can create innovation in art and eccentric behavior, but liking Plato leads black to white culture, and this is going to harm Asian Aryan ideology. So, I guess to sum up is, once again, I'm not attacking Plato, but I'm saying is there is a cult, there's a Socrates cult, and anyone who has an internet argument online is some acolyte for Socrates. And the best way to win the argument or get nothing is say, destroy Socrates, and by saying how it doesn't have anything to do with your fairs and it's basically Santa Claus of the past. So, yep.